And Bernadette disappeared, huh?
She didn't come.
Bernadette!
Where is she?
Does anybody know that song? Bernadette!
Oh my God.
Okay.
No worries, it's okay.
For top song. Okay. I'm old.
So you enjoying Comic-Con so far?
Oh, I'm having a blast. I mean, I'm enjoying it to the extent that I had 20 minutes to go onto the floor so far and actually do what I want to do at Comic-Con, which is buy merch and like see people and see cosplay people. So I've already purchased 3 of these great artists. This like Darth Vader with like half skull, half this. I have the Ouija board part. This Yoda Ouija board thing, and then it has a Ouija, like a Star Wars Ouija, and I did a I purchased one more thing. Oh, Westworld, the Yul Brynner art. So I did 3 of those so far, but I still haven't gotten to t-shirts, comics, collectibles, video games. So I'm hoping once we get through with all of this, tomorrow I can actually do the convention.
Are you going to attend any of the panels?
Oh yeah, I'll attend.
What you're looking forward to?
I want to see. Hold on, I gotta look at my thing. Do you mind if I look at my thing just for a second?
No worries.
Because I want to make sure I get the name correct. Well, I definitely want to see John DiMaggio. I love Bender so much, so like I want to like hear him talk loud. I'm gonna go to Mark's thing, Mark Hamill's talk. I don't know what time it is, but I'm gonna go to that. I wanted to go to the Orville thing, but I think I'll miss it today. And then I have to kind of look up what else. I don't know if Gene Ha's here, but I love Gene Ha's art, so hopefully I can see him. He drew me years ago. My wife and I went up because I was, Alan Moore's top 10. So we were big fans of Top 10, and he drew me and my wife as I was the 5th Doctor, so I was Peter Davidson, and she was a Dalek. She was Davros, so she was like in the Davros little pod, the Dalek pod. Yeah, so I'm thrilled. I mean, I've been going to cons since '83, I think '82. So this is old hat, but it's way bigger now. It used to be like 4 rooms, and you were just buying from the same vendors every time you went.
Is art something that you hunt for more specifically, or do you get toys and other things too? You said t-shirts and...
T-shirts I would say is probably my least, just in terms of I have so many t-shirts already. Yeah. So I have to like really find like a good, I have like a dresser that's just t-shirts. There's nothing else in it. I would say collectibles like toys and art are primary, like for cons like this, and pins. I love pins. I think like those they used to have these old Who pins. They were like all the Doctors and the TARDIS and stuff. I like those, like the really artfully done pins. But yeah, like now because I have the office, at our show, I like to put more art in there, and I like posters. I have a Wrath of Khan poster that does not say Star Trek II. I have like one of those because originally it was just Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan, and then they added the 2. So I have one of the pre-2 posters. So I try to look for finds like that. That's what I'm into.
Rarities.
Yeah, rarities for sure.
What's the most rarest thing you have in your house?
I would actually say it's probably that 2 poster. That's the rarest thing. I mean, because that's a very rare. I can't think of anything that. Oh, I have a Spock decanter. I have a Spock brandy decanter from 1977. I think it was released, or 78. It was whenever they were running up to the motion picture. And it's still, you can smell the brandy in it, and you pull Spock's head off to pour it.
Yeah. Oh my lord.
So.
Would you say Star Trek is your favorite property of...
This is an interesting arc. So, by the way, if you notice, I like long-form answers. So, Space 1999 was the first thing I really understood science fiction-wise with Martin Landau, because there was a Space 1999 album, and so I could listen to the album. So it was probably like 5 or 6 when I started listening to Space 1999. My dad was a huge Who fan, has always been a huge Who fan, so I got into Doctor Who when they were rerunning the Baker episodes in the late 70s, early 80s. So I would say Who and Space 1999 was sort of where my entry point was in terms of visual science fiction. Then Star Wars was actually first, and although, you know, Star Wars is fantasy, science fiction, it's not you can't say, I know there's this big debate, but you just cannot say that it's not fantasy because it's outside of the full commentary on society. Science fiction is the extension of our world into a notion of what's a possibility in our world. So Star Wars would be the first thing for me where I like fully connected with sort of the fantasy and sci-fi elements. And then Trek I actually didn't roll into because I was watching a lot of old TVs, Twilight Zones, things like that. I rolled into Trek when I was probably about 10 or 11, like pretty late in terms of like Trekdom. So I started watching old series, and I think, you know, I probably saw the movies. Like I probably saw 2 in theaters and 3 in theaters before I watched the old series. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And so then I watched the old series, obviously fell in love with that. So it's a weird competition. I don't want to pick one because I have rolled through full Vader outfits and full Luke outfits, and I've also worn the Hotel Bellman outfit from 2 and 3, and you know what I mean? Like I've sort of, and I've dressed as the 4th and 5th Doctor for Halloweens for years, so like it's hard for me to say which one. I would say those are my 3 pillars. I think, you know, and especially in science fiction, which is representative philosophy, things run in 3s. So you have your 3 pillars. You have your who, which is, you know, representative of sort of like absolute abandonment and yet respect for time travel and sort of the fantasy and like notion of like really diving into friendship, companionship, solving history, but also like who introduced worlds that you just could not even conceive of, right? Trek gives you this sort of almost stable governmental perspective of like, here's how we could be, here's how the Federation could be, how humanity, what it could reach, and it was a real metaphor for our times, right? And Star Wars was the notion of going so far from something that you're in a completely new immersive world. And I think you need all 3 of those things to sort of complement your notions of sci-fi. I'm a huge Futurama fan too.
I think we don't have time for it more.
That's fine, just keep asking.
So you mentioned UCB, and I know you started doing your Trump impression there.
Yes.
And I was wondering how you feel it's evolved over the years.
It has. It's funny. I looked at some old photos from the original thing we did, and I used to wear a dirty surfer's wig and a blue suit. It looked nothing like Trump. I think one, it evolved in the mechanics of just how I did the makeup and what I had for, you know, resources. And I would say that the impression moved from, I mean, I started to study him, and it moved from like sort of, I think, a real broad caricature and sort of an interpretation that was like a little more like this, which, you know, is still currently done. And I sort of went, that was like my baseline. And then I moved from that and said, well, how do we get into his body? And I would say it evolved by sort of like learning that his core is a lot more about the impression. Like, he doesn't have a good center of gravity. And also, like, he changes over time. He's changed quite a bit in 2 years in terms of his tonality, his voice. He's aging in the presidency, and he's, I think, more tired, and I imagine he's a person who doesn't change how he is. So I've been trying to keep up with that. So yeah, I would say, you know, just accuracy, and then once you get an accuracy, then going into sort of fantasy of like what it could be, and if this is true, then what else is true, which is a principle of UCB, you know, improv philosophy.
What do you think Donald Trump would say about, or, you know, if you had to imagine, you know, sitting face to face to him and you doing an impression of him,
right.
How do you think he would take it, in your opinion? Would he say it's amazing?
I think he would sit like this and be like, and then when you finish, you'd be like, it was pretty good. It was good. I don't know.
You think he'd tweet
What's
about
with this guy? What's with this guy? I think he would like deflect it because he'd probably know it was accurate. I mean, he hasn't tweeted about our show, which I'm fine with, perfectly fine with. I don't know if he would. I don't know the level of sense of humor he has about himself if he's not in charge of it. That would be my guess. I think he probably delights in other people's pain. It's not the type of humor I like.
Is there anything that you would stay away from with regards to, you know, your impression of him? Anything that you feel like is a topic? Because he just
his son, Barron, Tiffany. I think people who are not involved, and also his son's 10. I mean, you know, I think in that sense, like, my intention or objective is not to just humiliate and hurt a person. It's to take on the people who have chosen to say we want to be accountable in public life for what we do. So Ivanka is part of that, Melania is part of that, because they, Jared, John Jr., they've chosen to participate in the public sphere, so therefore they are saying it's we've decided that we're going to be willing to be criticized for the public realm we're stepping into. I would also say I try to steer clear of like the very obvious jokes like Orange Man or Pumpkin and things like that, because they're just sort of tried and pat and true, So I would moreover rather litigate him in terms of his behavior or ignorance or lack of skill.
Do you feel you've been able to reach out to any Trump supporters and maybe flip them, whether through your show or...
This is going to be the last question.
Sure. I've had, yes, I've had a few people who have actually come off live shows saying we're not going to vote for him, but that didn't help. But, and I'm sure, I think it's you have some people who like the impression and sort of say, like, I see where you're coming from, but, we still support him, but we like the show. And you're like, okay. And then, yeah, I'm sure we change people. We try to of course, the supporters fall into categories that it's difficult because some of them are sort of abhorrent, the white supremacy blocks and so on. And yet I think there's a lot of other people who, are a function of a white supremacist, a white supremacy paradigm in this country where they don't even think that they contribute to that. And that does not excuse them, but ignorance is a path to racism, sexism, and homophobia and so on. So it's more so, I call them, it's like the reachables. People that if you just said, listen, you got to take some tough truths, but like you could come out of it and be okay as a person. You want to reach those people. You want to reach a person who said, I really, I was struggling and I'm hoping that this person will blow up the system and it'll change things for me. And sort of say like, well, that was sort of not true. And this notion of blowing things up didn't do that. And so why are you still standing behind someone who didn't even deliver on the thing you wanted? That would be my argument, The other ones are unreachable.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you.